There is a fifth dimension, beyond that which is known to man. A dimension of sound.
For the 150th time, you are not getting out of here. Please let me finish the Count of Monte Cristo.
A dimension of sight.
No change at all.
What? I think I look fine.
A dimension of mind. Next stop, the Twilight Zone.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Fifth Dimension, a Twilight Zone podcast. I am your, once again, host, Nick, and we're back for our fourth episode. And once again, joining me is my 2D counterpart, which, of course, is Triv from Trivial Theater. What's going on, Triv?
Well, I'm far too cool to talk to you because, as you can see by my sunglasses, I am now a movie star. After this week's episode, I think I deserve it.
We'll call you Triv, the ultimate trivia theater.
Yeah, I like it. Doesn't really, it'll look good on billboards.
Exactly. Actually, that would look pretty cool. We have the staring at you, Rod Serling, and the two microphones and two headphones in the back there and everything.
That always has to come up. I think I'm gonna have to Photoshop this thing to get rid of that stuff.
Yeah, it's great though. It gives you dual audio stereo sound.
Oh God, it's hard to make one microphone work, much less two.
It's funny because the Yeti mics, which I know you have and which I have, are like the easiest mics to set up, but somehow they become the most difficult when you start messing with the little buttons on the sides and the back and everything.
Oh, totally. It's one of those things where you touch it and you don't touch it again. It's a good thing. You don't touch crazy dicks and you don't touch crazy mics.
You don't cross swords.
Do not cross the streams.
Exactly.
Wait a second. That's another thing entirely.
I don't know. That might show up in the Twilight Zone. That's the best part. We're jumping off the rails, just straight down the river.
Oh, totally. I would expect nothing less.
So I have a confession to make before we actually start.
All right, drop your confession. I
posted out on the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. I was in Orlando last couple of days and was at Hollywood Studios where Tower of Terror is, and I was nice enough to ride the Rise of Resistance ride, which has a small drop, but when it comes to 13 stories, it was a little intimidating for me, and it's a ride I've ridden like 18 times and I still can't get myself to ride it. So
fine. I suppose if it was 12 you would have been fine, but that 13th one just kind of did you in. I
know. I worked at a hotel way too long. Now the 13th floor is always the unlucky number. That's why hotels don't have the 13th floor.
Well, they don't have a 13th listed floor, but the 13th floor is the 13th floor regardless of whether it's the 12th or the 14th.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, it was ironic. With the hotel I worked at, we had the 12th floor, and then there was this you would go up the steps down this kind of smallish hallway, and then you would show up on the 14th floor. So there was a 13th floor, but it was just not known.
Oh wow, it's like TARDIS.
Yeah, exactly. It was a mystery hallway.
Ooh, it's secretive.
So anyways, so it's been a little over a week since we last recorded because, like I said, I went on to Orlando to visit Mickey Mouse, the Rat, and Universal Studios for Halloween Horror Nights. But how was your week?
Yeah, it's not too bad. It's, just kind of normal. I've been sitting here since the last time we did one of these, so just waiting for this to start.
Yeah, I know. I got online. I'm like, man, she looks parched. Looks like she needs some water.
True. So I did actually see. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I threw some water at the screen, but then my computer restarted, so that didn't work very well.
No, that wouldn't work very well. I did actually see Malignant, and that was pretty awesome. I know your senses on that movie are a little different than mine, but my B movie senses are more honed. So your better movie senses are honed.
Exactly. That is definitely a movie that fits right in the Trivial Theater. I can guarantee you that.
Oh yeah. Hopefully review coming up here soon if I can get my ass in gear and do something with it. So
which theater would that fit in your theater there?
Oh God. Well, depending upon your thoughts on the movie, I mean, some people would put it in the straight up bad theater. I'd put it in a faves for me. So it'll probably end up in the main just because it's such a big movie and I know it's going to draw crowds, ideally speaking.
Right.
Stop by and see my review, please.
Yeah, definitely. As you know, we are a trivial We are a
Let's
trivial
never get
theater
this right.
podcast.
We were a Twilight podcast one week. We're a trivial theater podcast, which I'm fine with. I mean, hey, that's great. But Twilight Zone.
Man.
Say it with me. Twilight Zone.
Yes, it's been a long day, people. We are a Twilight Zone podcast. We talk about episode to episode.
Proud of you.
This week, anyways, this week we're talking season 1, episode 4, the 16mm Shrine. This is an episode that is considered one of the worst in the Twilight Zone canon or repertoire, or whatever you want to call it. It's pretty crazy that a 4th episode of a season would be this maligned or whatever you want to call it. But it premiered October 23rd, 1959, a couple days before my birthday. Yay. And right. It's directed by Mitchell Leisen, which this is his third. This is a weird kind of trivia thing because it's in the companion. But Mitchell Leisen or however you pronounce his last name. This was the last episode he directed, but there's 2 other episodes that haven't come up yet. Which he directed Escape Clause and People Are Like All Over, which I think you like. That is that the episode?
I think so. That's one of them that I really like.
Right. Well, there was one would the Real Martian Stand Up or something like that?
Oh yeah, that was crap. I think that was that one. So I can't remember what. Yeah. If I saw a picture of it, I'd know, but by name, there's somebody that fall in the same name.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But episodes directed by Mitchell Leisen. Like I said, he only directed 3 episodes, I think, before he passed. Once again, written by Rod Serling. Featured music from Franz Waxman, who there is trivia about Franz Waxman.
He also did the music for Sunset Boulevard, which this episode was kind of based off of. Also, the guy that Mitchell Leisman also directed Billy Wilder movies in the 30s.
Oh, okay. That's interesting because he this episode has Sunset Boulevard all written all over it, as well as The Star, which I've never heard of before, with Betty Davis. It's shot by George T. Clemens again. He's pretty much, I think, the standard cinematographer for the series. It premiered on October 23rd, 1959. So like right before Halloween, which I think they should have maybe done a little bit better episode before Halloween. Maybe. But
I don't know that Halloween was as big. I'm not going to say it wasn't big in the 50s and 60s, but I don't think they put quite the emphasis. I think it was more of a kid holiday. So it's not like they did specialized episodes.
Like 40-year-old slutty nurses and stuff now.
I mean, I'm sure there was a section of the population that did, but the main demographic that they were seeking, that CBS was seeking at this point in time, I'm pretty sure probably wasn't looking at slutty nurses. Slutty housewives, maybe, but slutty nurses, not so much.
Oh man.
They
if
were
you want to know what
the
50s exactly. If you want to know what the 50s are like, just watch Pleasantville.
Oh yeah, there you go. I guess we had discussed that last week too. Although you won't become colorful by doing, masturbating and things like that.
It's ironic. That Pleasantville is a pure Twilight Zone movie in its essence.
100%. It's just a good movie generally too, I think. But
it's great. Is one of the underrated classics by Gary Ross. But the episode stars Ida Lupino, who, interesting trivia, which I'll go ahead and let you do the trivia on this one. But she plays the main character, Barbara Jean Trenton, but she has an interesting kind of history with the Twilight Zone, and I'll let you go on that one.
Oh, so she starred in this one, and then she also directed an episode called The Masks, which was I don't remember the episode, like what season. But she's the only person to do that and the only female to be a director of a Twilight Zone episode.
I'm telling you, the Twilight Zone was very ahead of its time when it came to using. It was progressive. Very progressive. Thank you. Absolutely. It would have a lot of this. There were some stars that were African Americans, some stars, directors and writers, and it's really interesting because some of the most famous editors of all time, especially even the 50s and 60s, were women as well, which is pretty cool when you think about it. So
Well, and that
Um,
you get the stereotypes of the times, but then you always had people behind the scenes that did stuff and probably under male pseudonyms in a lot of cases.
yeah, exactly. You'll be surprised how many women directors there have been working the studio system that never got the credit they deserve. So, which
Yeah.
is a lot of what this episode's main thrust is sexism in Hollywood, and how it's still kind of, as much as I don't like this episode, there is some really kind of interesting thought-provoking ideas with sexism and how women are viewed in Hollywood after they get to a certain age and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, totally.
So
There is
yeah.
one other kind of fun piece of trivia on this one. So the staircase that's used with the banister, with this imposing banister, also appears in the Twilight Zone episodes, The Purple Testament, which was in 60, Elegy, which was also in 60, and then Long Live Walter Jameson.
Oh, the elegy. Oh, elegy is one of my favorite episodes. I'm trying to think where that's. I'm guessing they just, like, when they were filming these, they filmed them out of order. Maybe they just had the set available and they just used it and save money and stuff like that, which is.
Well, and I'm sure
what
they
they were
probably
known.
just reused, like they had like, I'm sure they had a lot of these sets set up for general use, and they just redressed them accordingly for things like this.
Yeah, that's true.
It's kind of like you look
Um,
at the back lot, that the house that was used for Nightmare on Elm Street. Like, you had the house from the Munsters down the street from that. It was
yeah,
used for what was the show in the 2000s? Not Naughty Housewives.
a Desperate Housewives.
Desperate Housewives. Yeah. I mean, all those things come back around and you see them time and time again. Even in the 60s, the mansion exterior from Batman was a house that was reused time and time again for exteriors and things like that.
Well, I mean, you can look at the clock tower from Back to the Future. We talked about in the first episode.
Very much
The
so.
same thing. So
Gotta love those backlots.
yeah, actually, what the coolest thing about doing those studio tours, like Warner Brothers or Universal, is seeing those houses and stuff like that. So, but this also guest starred Martin Balsam, who played Danny, who, of course, if you've seen Psycho, he was a detective.
Also 12 Angry Men.
Was he in that?
Mm-hmm. I don't remember which juror he was, but he was one of the guys that was pretty angry.
He's one of the many angry men in that movie.
Yeah. Well, he was like one of the guys that was that held out the longest for like the death sentence for the kid. And he was one of the angriest of the angry men.
Right. I've never actually seen that movie.
Oh, that's a great movie. I will sit down with you. We'll do a watch party for that one if you like, because that one is awesome. Like, just a great movie.
Yeah.
It does get the respect it deserves, but it doesn't get the respect that it deserves.
Right. Jerome Cowan, who plays Jerry Herndon, he's the the on-screen love interest, Barbara Trenton. And I think he and her worked together, if I read that right.
They acted in a lot of those movies together. That's what their connection was.
Yeah, like High Sierra and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
John Clark plays young Jerry Herndon. Ted Corsia, who plays Marty Saul, and I think he's the executive that is in the episode. And then Alice Frost plays Sally, which is the
long-suffering maid.
The episode. Yeah, the maid.
Yeah, that poor woman. I felt so bad for her. It's just like, how would you even? I mean, Alfred with Batman would be one thing, but can you imagine like someone just sitting in their darkened room watching movies all the time and be like, well, I'm going to try and make the meat, but if they die, it's on my hands. People are going to blame my dumb butt.
Exactly. But she kind of ran away screaming, breaking some china there. So she
again, do not blame her for that. Because, walking into a room and seeing what she saw, yeah, I'd be a little put off too.
Well, that's the thing. They actually never. We'll get into it. They never really show what she sees, but I guess she sees the same thing Danny sees at the end of the episode.
I'm assuming something similar to that. Maybe not specifically that, but I think that I guess we can talk about it when we come to it, because kind of jumping way ahead. Horse miles in front of the cart.
Exactly. So this is like I said before, this is an episode that's considered pretty much the bottom of the barrel of the Twilight Zone episodes. I honestly don't even remember this episode very well. I remember it being like, I've heard about it, if you read the top 10 best and worst episodes of history for Twilight Zone. But once I went back and watched it, I remember why I didn't like it very much. I don't know how you feel about it. Like I said, I don't know if there's an episode. If you like the episode, which is perfectly all right. Anybody that likes this episode, I'm more power to you. I 100%, understand if you do or not. But it's just a weird episode. It really is. Like starting out before the episode. Have you seen this episode before?
At some point I had, but like you say, it's not. I would say that I don't dislike this episode per se, but I do think that in the grand scheme of Twilight Zone episodes, until you get to that last probably 2 minutes, it doesn't feel like a Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah.
Like, and your brain goes so much to Sunset Boulevard and all of the implications of that. It felt like there needed filler, and that's what this was really. And again, I think it had messages, it had some good stuff in there, but it didn't give you anything that felt like a Twilight Zone episode. And even when it did, it still didn't.
Yeah, it's weird how these things work because I always go back to Lost. I'm at a point now, if a season's more than like 10 episodes, I get really kind of jaded by wanting to watch it. And that's not to take away from any TV series that's like The Simpsons or Friends or Lost at the time where they were like 24 episode seasons.
Mm-hmm.
But this is always going to happen. It doesn't matter. It could be the greatest TV show of all time. It could be ER or I don't know, Grey's Anatomy or even the Twilight Zone. There's always going to be like those 2 or 3 episodes which are just not that great. And this is one of those episodes, unfortunately. But
even in a TV series that has 10 episodes, you're still going to have those that are like, I think Walking Dead, that you get those episodes that build up. And regarded, this is anthology, so it's a totally different can of worms, but you get those episodes that they can't hit bangers all the time, I guess.
Right. And I don't know, this episode's just so weird. So the opening narration, it starts actually pretty much as the episode opens with Barbara Trenton watching videos or watching 16 millimeter reels of herself. But Rod Serling goes, picture of a woman looking at a picture. Movie great of another time. Once brilliant star in a firmament, no longer a part of the sky. Eclipsed by the movement of earth and time. Barbara Jean Tenton, whose world is a projection room, whose dreams are made out of celluloid. Barbara Jean Tenton. It's like a tongue twister right there. Barbara Jean Tenton.
How did they let her keep that noise how did they let her keep that name when she went to Hollywood?
I don't know. It makes me wonder sometimes, these opening narrations, how many times Rod Serling had to like redo them because he kept getting tongue tied and having to stop and stuff like that. But
I don't doubt
it. So this Barbara Jean Trenton, struck down by a hit and run years and lying on the unhappy pavement, trying desperately to get the license number of a fleeting fame. God, that was a lot of really weird words at once. I'll get better at this eventually.
Oh, you're good.
So the episode, for the most part, the opening first half of the episode is about a woman named Barbara Jean Trenton. She is in essence, washed up actress, a woman who is beyond her years according to Hollywood. Like I said, this comes into like sexism and how Hollywood views women after a certain age. And she, like I want to say Howard Hughes, it just kind of lives in her screening room, just doesn't leave.
She's a recluse.
She's reclusive. Yeah, she's reclusive, of course. Her maid is constantly worried about her agent, who is played by Martin Balsam, who of course is Danny Weiss, is in essence the main 3 characters. He basically comes in to check up on her. He's been worried about her. He has a possible new role for her, so he's going to take her to the studio. But as you can see, she's kind of lost her view of the world. She's so she wants to go back to the 30s with her on-screen romantic interest and the Jerry Herdinan character, however you pronounce his name. And we get a lot of just like kind of stage dialogue. We get a lot of just woman trying to relive her past, which we all in essence do.
Mm-hmm.
When we get to a certain age, we start really wanting to go back to our past, when a simpler time, when when we were young and we weren't worrying about bills and all that nonsense. And the first part is basically just them talking about trying to get her out of the house, trying to get her to do something. And like I said, Danny has a possible part for her in a new movie. All this stuff was really kind of just slow and plodding, and I understand her feeling this way because, like I said, the whole actress thing in Hollywood even happens today. You see people like Cameron Diaz retiring because they want to give her roles that are of grandparents or stuff like that. She's getting to that age.
Right.
And like, what is your overall take on this first part? Do you feel that it justifies even a strong opening, or do you feel it's weak, or what's your overall take on the opening?
I think that it does a good job of showing kind of someone trying to relive their past by looking at, whether it be a photo book, whether it be, old movies, whatever it might be. I think they do a good job of showing her as, she's not living now, she's living then. She assumes all of her best years are behind her. The nostalgia is overwhelming in this part. I even like when the maid comes in, like you see the shadows of the reels going, and I think that's such a cool effect when they get to that point.
No, I was gonna say, you created that kind of that halo circle effect that for the intro of the podcast, and that similar effect happens when she's watching the movies, which I thought was kind of interesting.
That was, and I do think that they did a really great job. Like when they were filming that part, they did a really great job of making it look like a 30s movie, like that kind of, you could almost see Casablanca, the way that they did the back and forth between younger Jerry and younger Barbara.
It's kind of interesting. I'm gonna go off in a little bit of tangent. As like I said, I went to Halloween Horror Nights, which is awesome. Everybody should go once in their life. And there's a house which is called Halloween Horror Nights Icons, and basically what it is a nostalgia trip through the different icons of Halloween Horror Nights.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the icons is the original icon was called the Director, and he is the 13th year of Halloween Horror Nights. And this is not on the level of what she's going through in this episode, but you start getting to a point where you see things like that, and you see them kind of recreate something that's nostalgic, and you look back and you kind of want to go back and watch videos of stuff that you remember, and like think about it when you're sitting there. And I think that's kind of what she's doing. I don't think it entirely works, just on the simple fact that I think it's a little too much hitting in the Sunset Boulevard territory, because it's about a screenwriter and
the whole show does. I mean, this is I mean, it is outright rip off of Sunset Boulevard. Besides the ending, it is outrightly, she never says I'm ready for my close-up Mr. DeVille, but the way it takes, I don't know, like the premise for shooting this, if it was just like trying to do a filler episode, or maybe something happened at the time that drove the creation of this. But yeah, the overall sense of it, I mean, if you've seen any part of Sunset Boulevard, I mean, this movie or this episode definitely reflects that.
Right. And I'm going through the production codes, which tell you like when the episode was filmed and stuff like that. And the production code for this is 173-610, which means it was the 10th episode filmed in the first season.
Oh wow!
I think the last two numbers are the what it means for the 10th episode or whatever, or however that works. And I almost think like when Rod Serling was writing these scripts, maybe he felt like he could get away with doing something similar to Sunset Boulevard. I think maybe it's possible that's why this episode is really kind of maligned as much as it is, because it feels like Rod Serling at his worst when it comes to just not knowing what he wants to write about, because there are episodes where he is clearly defined, if you agree.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah, where he is literally like, I want to talk about racism. There's an episode I want to do about, fear in the neighborhood, or fear in the human ideology and stuff like that. And then he's like, you know what? I think I'll do an episode that kind of borrows from Sunset Boulevard, and it'll be about an aging woman. And it just, to me, that just feels like just you have no idea what you want to do. You just want to repeat what someone else has done, which is Hollywood in a nutshell. So
yeah, I do think though too with this, at the time, I mean, so this came out in 59 and Sunset Boulevard came out in 50. Writing off
Right.
the success of that in itself kind of creates some nostalgia for something, and
Yeah.
it does, this isn't like an outright ripoff. It does take its own
Yeah.
direction with some of its major points, but yeah, the overall story definitely repeats to that. And maybe the thing was, I mean, sometimes the best way to tell a story is the most simple, and this is about as simple as it gets. Maybe he was, trying to talk to what Hollywood was at the time, because I mean, the 50s weren't any better than now as far as, in that respect, the way that things rolled then.
Yeah, because they always say that Hollywood is a collection of like 7 different tropes, always reused over and over and over.
Oh yeah.
Like and maybe part of the whole idea, I didn't find anything on it. I'm just kind of maybe theorizing. Maybe this episode is his way of telling about Hollywood and how Hollywood looks at itself and reusing the same story over and over and over. So that's a very real possibility. Maybe he's playing off that whole, like you said, nostalgia, but also playing off the whole idea of how Hollywood is almost more conceptually bankrupt in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah. Well, you even look at like the way that stories are told. I'm trying to think what it was. I think it was Phantom of the Opera was recreated before they got 10 years into the talkie era, so it would have been like the late 30s at that point. It had been redone just an insane amount of times by that point, and you're talking from like 1900 to 1939, so over the course of roughly 40 years. I mean, wow.
I mean, the 10 Commandments, Cecil B. DeMille did the same movie twice in like a 20-year period.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right, because did it silent and then in like a normal talkie.
But this leads into Barbara finally decides she's going to go, and this is where we meet Marty Saul, who is your very stereotypical, very pretty true portrait of not only 50s executives but just executives in Hollywood in general. You can go and watch any movie, TV series, and this is what an executive's like. It actually reminded me of the executive that Joe Mantegna plays in The Three Amigos.
Oh yeah,
he's just,
you're right.
I don't know why I thought about that, but he's just anyways, he offers like her a small part, very just kind of, why would you invite me over for this? And she of course is very taken aback and very upset by it, and she's like, I'm not doing this. She walks out, and Marty like scorns her for that, but then Dan of course threatens to punch him in the teeth, which I love it.
One thing I noticed, and I don't know like one way or the other, but Dan's last name is Wise, and you think like Wiseman. Right. I'm sure there's probably some play on words there, but I found that interesting.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he's the conscience of her character, and he's the one that kind of just knows that she's in a better place, because the one thing agents want to do is keep their talent happy. Yeah. And maybe she was just happy, and he's just like, all right, this is what she wants, and I can't really change that fact, because it's just how Hollywood works. It's how egos work in Hollywood. They want to do what they do, and agents are there just to get them parts and money and A-list status, I guess.
Oh no, absolutely. I did have to laugh. So when Marty asked her to raise the veil, that almost felt a little bit like metaphorical, as well as actually, because she was wearing like this netted veil hat thing, and she flips it up, and obviously he sees her face is slightly aged and all that stuff. But it's almost like from that perspective, seeing the realization that, okay, you're not going to get this. There's, as far as this guy is concerned, you're past your prime. Time to move on to something else.
Yeah, and I think Danny, because it moves on to, they go back to the house, and Danny gets really angry at her because she is really just committed to just wanting to go back to the 30s and be with Jerry and all those characters, and he gets really upset, which really, I think he either truly kind of loves her or really feels for her and really wants her to be okay. And the coming out of anger, it has some good dimension to it. But
I had to laugh the fact that the studio exec for all of the, oh, you're too old and all that stuff, like he looked, and I guess not being on camera and being able to hold someone to that higher standard when not holding yourself to it. But God, just the fact he was like, well, you're I want you to play a 40s, grandmother. And it's just like, dude, yeah, no, that you wouldn't survive 5 minutes in Hollywood. And the whole, and I think that whole discussion about, and it happens to actors too, but it happens so much to actresses. We're having these same conversations 62 years later, and they were having those conversations 30 years before as well. So, the conversations, it just goes to show you that across time, these messages don't change. It's all relative in that respect.
And that's also what Rod Serling's strengths were, is he, was good at kind of knowing human culture and human, once again, ideologies and how they think, because, you look at the episodes and they all have stuff that's very prescient in today's society. And I think that's why a lot of actresses get like surgery and liposuction to look younger, because they're afraid that they're going to be put out by the next young, hot woman or young, attractive woman or whatever. Yeah. And, it's crazy to see, because, I think some of the best actresses working are people like Sigourney Weaver and Nicole Kidman and stuff like that. And it feels like at some point, I feel like that, the way the world has been going, there's still problems, but they have been able to get a little bit of movement. But it's just funny how a guy can be in his 70s or 80s and still be able to play like a sexual deviant or whatever.
Sean
and a
Connery.
Woman is looked at as some, yeah, exactly. And a woman is looked at as like a crippled person or something like that, like a person with a disability, and it's just not right. And I don't understand it, but like you said, it's right there on the screen, exactly what Rod Serling is trying to show, and what Billy Wilder and stuff like that were trying to show, and with the Sunset Boulevard. And it's pretty crazy when you think about it. So
I was happy that they didn't go so I guess maybe this is something for later, but like she goes to the dude, and then she gets brought back home, and she kind of gets verbally bitch slapped by Danny, just saying, this is how it is. You can't live in the 30s. You have to live in the now.
Yeah.
And then she goes and binges movies for the next couple of weeks.
But the next part, like you said, is just her watching movies, and she tells Danny that all she has to do is wish hard, and if she wishes hard enough, she can be part of her early 30s career again. So he brings this is when Jerome Cowan comes in as Jerry Hernadan. Why these names have to be so complicated?
It's the 60s, 50s.
Yeah, exactly. So he brings her in. He brings him in. He's much older, and she's like, this isn't right. We gotta do a film together. And he's like, I'm in charge of like a bunch of dealerships or something like that, and our grocery store chains. And it kind of like puts her on edge and stuff like that. It keeps her, in much more of a state than she was already in. And it's really crazy how time works on people, I guess you could say.
Well, and he looks like, she walks in and she's like, she spent time primping and stuff, and I'm grateful she didn't go the route of Gloria Swanson in the Sunset Boulevard. It was, she puts on like this fancy frock, and that's, does her hair up, but that's kind of it. She doesn't go any further all out. But she comes downstairs, and she's all done up, and he looks his age. And time was definitely kinder to her than it was to him. But she walks in and she's like, I expected to see you in an officer uniform, or like tie and tails or whatever, and you're dressed in a, she doesn't say it, but in her face you can see he's dressed in a very basic suit and glasses and white hair and wrinkles and all that stuff. And it's like, I got out of it. And she's just totally put off by this.
It's crazy to have somebody like that really just on the fringes of like losing her sanity, because she can't get past the whole idea of, people change. It's been 20 years, and how she looks at, society and reality now. And I don't know.
Well, but you look at I think that happens to a lot of people, like the folks that try and relive their high school glory days. Like they go to a class reunion, and they know they can't stop talking about how great high school was or whatever it is. We all have those moments, but it's there are those people that it's easier to live in the past than deal with what the life is in the present, whether it be because you didn't turn out the way you expected, or you expected more or different or less or whatever. I mean, it's a retreat, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, you and I both talk every once in a while about how we kind of wish we had started our YouTube channels back in like 2009 or whatever,
Yeah.
back in the day when it was like the Wild Wild West. And, there's unfortunately at this point, we only can continue from where we started and,
Yeah.
go from there. And
I'd probably still be
yes,
under 1,000 subs.
yeah, whatever. No, but in all seriousness, like it's the same type of thing where you want something that you can't have anymore, and you have to kind of, as you said, deal with the thing you can deal with and not with the thing you can't deal with, because it's already, unless you have a time machine or a phone booth or something like that, you can't change anything, because it's like it's impossible. It's not a reality. And unfortunately, because this is the Twilight Zone, that's a little bit of a different story, but for the most part, in reality, it's not a thing we can do. So
well, and even with the stories where, because there's a story down the way that I actually really like a lot. Guy, I think it's a time machine. He goes back to like the 1890s, because he had read about it in regard that's a little different than living through it, but goes back to the 1890s, and he expects it to be this idyllic place, and he finds that it's nothing like what he read about. The experiences that you have that bring you forward in time, there's no way to reclaim. Even if she went back to the 30s, there's no way to reclaim what she was. Your feelings and all that stuff aren't gonna, they're gonna be with you now, not then.
Well, the funny part about the whole thing is, I always talk about, wouldn't it be cool to go back to the 50s or the 40s when everything seems simpler? And then I started thinking about that. I'm like, there's no cell phones. There's no computers.
There is that.
There's somewhat of there's 3 channels.
Yeah, if you have channels at all.
Yeah, 90% of people don't have AC. I think or 40% of people don't have AC.
Outdoor plumbing in some cases.
Yeah, exactly. You have to use a road map. I was just thinking about all these things.
Not a road map, no.
Or a triptych. I remember those things. But in all honesty, like, you think about like going back to that time, or even go back to the 80s, it's like, it's just something that I don't think people, or even you or I, when we think about that kind of stuff, it's like, is it really worth going back? Are we in a much better time? Yes, we're having our problems, but I mean, the 80s, they had the Cold War. In the 70s, they had, I don't know,
a lot of stuff. They had disco in the 70s.
Oh, God, that's a horrifying thought. Her having this thought, we all have this thought. I'd love to be able to go back and sit there and watch, the Disney Channel with all the, was it whatever's on Disney Channel, Goof Troop and stuff like that. But you just realize that you can't do that anymore. So
no.
Yeah.
And the thing is it's like the old joke about wherever you want to go, it'd be a great place to visit, but it'd be hell to have to be stuck there.
Exactly. It's like, oh man, I would love to live in California, and then you realize California has very much problems with comes to bills and earthquakes.
Yeah, fires.
But where we go from here is Barbara is in the projector in the room watching her films, and she does exactly what she told Danny she was going to do. She starts wishing, and they do the whole like blur out effect, similar to like Wizard of Oz, if you ever seen that. And the maid walks into the room, looks at the screen, is like looking for Barbara, and she looks at the screen, and all of a sudden she screams, and we're not really sure what exactly happened. We know, I mean, if you think about it, we kind of know where it's going.
Yep.
But Danny arrives at the house that day, and he goes in there, and the maid's kind of freaking out, and he decides, oh yeah, I'm gonna sit down and watch the film, because that's what she's telling him to do. And I thought this was like the coolest part of the episode, because it's actually the Twilight Zone-iest part of the episode. But he starts watching the film, and it looks similar to her. I think it's her house or whatever. Similar
it is.
to
It's
the house.
The same banister, and she's
house.
Yeah. She's actually wearing the same
Okay.
clothes too. So.
Oh, that's true. But it's in the 30s. She's much younger, and she's with her flame on, Jerry Hernan or whatever. I'm gonna keep calling the wrong name, but what is really kind of cool is she brings in everybody. They're gonna have a pool party or whatever they're gonna do, and Danny starts calling out for her, like yelling at her. And she actually turns and like she hears him, and she walks towards the screen. And she blows a kiss, drops the cloth or whatever handkerchief.
Yeah, kind of a handkerchief thing, or like a veil of sorts.
Yeah. And the film ends and Danny's kind of befuddled or whatever, and he walks out, and I'll let you, if you want to finish what exactly happens, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, he walks out and he's standing by the banister and where she went up with her friends, and there on the ground is the veil that she left behind. So kind of get that it's not a dream, it actually happened. And he smiles, and then they go into the epilogue.
Yeah, and his last words are, "To wish is Barbie," he says wistfully, "to the ones that come true," which is very poignant, because we always want that one dream or that one thing that happened in the past to come true again, and she got her wish. And
yeah,
it ends with Rod Serling saying, "To the wishes that come true, to the strange mystical strengths of the human animal," which is interesting, "who can take a wishful dream and give it a dimension of its own, to Barbara Jean Trenton, movie queen of another era, who has changed the blank tomb of an empty projection screen into a private world. It can happen in the Twilight Zone." So I take this closing narration, I don't know if you have a different opinion on it, as who could take a wishful dream and give it dimension of his own, as maybe looking to the future, creating something of your own, and whatever it may be, mystic strength of the human animal, movie queen of another era, stuff like that. It's looking back can also give you the ability to do something important or something that will make you happy for the future. And I it's the kind of like the simplified version, but do you have any more to add on to that?
Well, I think you can, not that it happened specifically that way here, but I think that she metaphorically took like what she was able to see the past, take it, and then build her own different future based on that. Regarded this was a very obscure and Twilight Zone-y way of saying it, but I don't know. I'm torn, because that's cool that she was able to wish herself into this place that made her happy. But on the other side, I don't know, she kind of gave into the delusions of it and didn't grow from it. She let herself, I don't know. I'm torn on this episode, because I do think there's more discussion to be had on it, but it takes it down a happy ending road for the time and for the most part, but it just, I don't know.
Well, the thing I'm kind of curious about, and as I was reading this and thinking about this, is this movie really about a happy ending, or is it about a person who can't move past her own desires, who can't find a happy ending, and she has to stay stuck in? It's like almost like you, for instance, I don't know, are really big into swimming or something like that, or playing sports like tennis, and you come to the end of your career and you keep doing it and you keep pushing, let's say like football or something. I mean, I'm kind of jumping around, but you get that NFL player who just keeps playing and playing and playing, who keeps not realizing that maybe they're end of their career, and in the end they see themselves happy there, but it's just not a happiness. It's them not being willing to accept what they are and who they are. And yeah, she gets her happy ending, but is it truly a happy ending? Is it just her, stuck in a period where she will never look past what she has now instead of what she had?
It's a good question, and I can see both sides of it, because you think to a certain age, like, okay, someone in their 80s, you're not going to go out and become a world famous basketball player at that age, regardless of what you were in the past.
Tell Betty White that.
Exactly. Well, I'm sure she could, but she's superhuman in a lot of levels. But there is that thing of maybe happiness when you get to that certain age. Maybe that happiness is all you need. that being able to relish those memories that made back to a time and place when you were happy. Like you look at us, I mean, you know, early to mid age, there's a ton of stuff, you know, it's still wide open. And even into your, I mean, even into your 80s, you can do stuff whenever you want. But I do think there does come that point where, I don't know, there's more behind than ahead. And maybe it's just finding that happy is, you know, all that you want. Now, obviously, in
Right.
her case, I'm guessing maybe 50s with her is what she was supposed to be.
Yeah, which is strange because it's still a young age for somebody, but
Yeah.
I,
But you look at
I don't
what
know.
she was, and especially in that era,
Mm,
I think the era plays into it a lot. But yeah, this I'm left with I'm left with a lot of weird feelings on this one, and I don't. It could go a lot of ways. It's either an incredibly like, yay, she got her happy ending, her wish came true, or it's a she was so unable to move past anything. She had this image in her head of the only thing that she could make that would make her happy was being in Hollywood and being a star, and there wasn't anything past that. And that's I don't know. I don't know. You could see it as very happy or kind of sad.
yeah, it could be. You could read it several ways. It could be very melancholy too. It could be, just it was interesting to think about because it's very much dealing with how we're like you said how we're dealing with now. I always found it funny when I was growing up in like high school and stuff like that. I was like so excited to be 21 and drink beer and I didn't turn 21 in high school, but I'm thinking about like when I was younger, like, oh man, I'll be 21 and I'll be drinking and I got 21 and I didn't feel like drinking anymore and I'm a year away from turning 40 and you start like questioning everything and
But that questioning pushes you forward though too. It makes
yeah.
you, you haven't fallen into the rut that she fell into. You haven't fallen into like your screening room where you're watching your old stuff over and over and over again. You're looking for new ways to move ahead and forward, and I don't think that's bad.
Yeah. I mean, I can't guarantee you I don't go back and watch my first episode every day.
No, that's on. I mean, I'm not going to say anything. I've watched my old stuff too, but it's a matter of you can still. There's nothing wrong with holding on to bits of the past. I mean, those things the things that make you remember why you do what you do and why you enjoyed it and those feelings
Yeah.
that gave you at that point. But it's being stuck in that era versus living in the world.
It's funny too, because the one thing that people do when especially when they have families or when they get older is they have plenty, especially in this day and age, they have plenty of footage to watch of their kids when they were younger and to relive all those kind of memories and kind of want to go back to those memories and that's another way to look at the film is just wanting to go back to your memories and stuff like that and
Reliving those sensations. Yeah, no, 100%. It is. Yeah, it's there's a lot more to this episode than what I thought we were going to talk about. But yeah, I think of the episodes that we've watched, even though this one isn't as good as a lot of them, I do think it raises more discussion than anything else. Like you look at, where is everybody? It is a pretty straightforward read. It's dude is going to the moon. There are things to consider there, but it's pretty straightforward. One for the angels, you've kind of got two sides to how you view it, but this one, it opens up a lot more discussion on the meaning of it and how how it played then and how it is perceived today. I mean, you could even look at someone that spends too much time online. You're living in this world of what is, it's not tactile as much as the real world is, but people go there to escape. And that leads to questions like Ready Player One and philosophical debates and all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, there is definitely more discussion, I think, based around this one.
And that's similar to, it's ironic that there's a new Matrix film coming out, but that's kind of like they're a little bit of the angle they were going for is how we don't necessarily want to live in the real world. We want to live in the digital world because it's escape from reality and stuff like that. I mean, that's not the whole entire premise of the Matrix, but
right.
When you think about it, like especially today, if you look at like the Matrix now, like with the new movie coming out, it's about living in a place that we don't see as reality, or we see as reality, but it's not actually reality, and that type of thing, I guess.
I mean, look at me. Look at your background.
Yeah, it's
This
pretty
Rod
crazy to
Serling
think about.
poster to my left. is right is fake, believe it or not.
Yeah. I'm definitely not in a spiral vortex right now. I can tell you that much.
Are you sure?
I don't know. Let me see if I can get it moving. Do-do-do,
Ah!
do-do-do.
Ah!
Like I said, I appreciate what Danny's trying to do, especially when it brings up debate. I'm gonna be fairly honest. I still don't like the episode very much, just on the simple fact that I think it's been done better. I even though I think the concepts and the ideas behind it are very relevant and prescient, I just think overall, I think Rod Serling either had issues trying to come up with a good story, or he really didn't know, really just needed an episode, and he's like, I'll stick with this, and it feels like it was done better in like Sunset Boulevard. I guess that's just my honest opinion.
No, I think you're right. It is, of the ones that I've seen and remembered seeing and the ones that we've covered, it's definitely the least Twilight Zone-y. And I don't know, I like, you could sit down and say, well, how do you improve the episode? How do you make it more of the Twilight Zone? And I mean, short of bringing in other bits beforehand and stuff like that, I don't know that you can, but it's not so much. It was, like you say, it was done better in Sunset Boulevard, and that's such a good movie. I don't know how you top that, other than to have this bring you back to bits of that, and to say, this is me reiterating a message that needs to be stated again, because it is a rampant problem in Hollywood. I don't know how what else you can say about the episode from that perspective.
Yeah. And I will honestly say this episode, even if it's the worst of Twilight Zone, is still better than a lot of stuff I watched.
Oh yeah, no, 100%.
It still has a very, yeah.
I think you'd be hard pressed to say. I mean, like you say, that the worst, even if there's worse ones than this, the worst of Twilight Zone is still miles above a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Looking at you, Chuck Lorre, whatever his name is. But that is in essence the 16mm Shrine. It's an episode that comes early in the Twilight Zone, but as a bump in the road, it's not the worst thing. As a bump in the road, as we said, but but like I said, it is something interesting. So
it's worth a watch once, just to say you watched it, because it is still something that Rod Serling created. It's still, worthy of your time. It's only 25 minutes. It gives you insight into a lot of stuff. I mean, the actors do a great job in it. They're melodramatic, as you would expect. There's a lot of good bits. It's just the script sort of lets it down.
Right. I'm really excited that I didn't know Ida Lupino directed The Mask, so I'm really looking forward to that. And if you have not seen Psycho, I would definitely check that film out. So
and 12 Angry Men is freaking amazing too.
Exactly.
And Sunset Boulevard. If you learn nothing else from this episode, go check out Sunset Boulevard, because that is a freaking masterpiece.
It's one of the best films about Hollywood, I can tell you that much. So
and it's got such great lines. The movies, or I didn't get small, the movies did.
Exactly.
I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. Nick. I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. Emporium.
Oh my god. But did you have anything else you want to talk about in the episode at all?
I don't think so. I think it just it was an episode. It follows it sets a trend for another kind of trope that a lot of Twilight Zones follow, and that's kind of the episode, or the idea of wishing for a different age.
Yeah. And
it goes to show you that as much as things change, as much as technology changes, this stuff still remains the same. The stuff that we're dealing with now, in a way, is what we dealt with in the 60s and in the 20s and in the 1890s, and however far back you want to go. It's
very much an episode about human being.
Oh yeah. And scummy people.
Exactly.
And not scummy people. And people that run grocery store chains out of Chicago.
That's a very 60s trope right there. Grocery stores.
Yeah, very much so. Especially old dudes with glasses and moderate business suits.
It's so funny. Like they all look the same.
They really do.
The guy, it's so funny.
Well, it's like all the glasses were the same. Everybody wore like white, or white shirts, black suits, those same glasses, the horn rim glasses.
The next episode is considered one of the greatest episodes of the series. We go from one of the worst episodes of the series to one of the greatest episodes of the series. This one's actually directed by Robert Stevens, which is interesting. Actually, it's not really that interesting. Yeah, he did like Alfred Hitchcock Presents and stuff like that.
Oh, nice.
But this one actually stars a young Ron Howard as well, which is pretty cool.
Oh yeah. Well, he was in everything
yeah.
in that era.
I know. He was thanks to his parents. But anyways, it's called Walking Distance. It's a very memorable, very nostalgic piece of it's actually this episode, but if it were kind of a reality type of thing, which is kind of interesting. You know, guy going back to his past in a lot of aspects,
nice.
but yeah. But it's called Walking Distance. Like I said, we'll actually have a guest on for that episode too.
Woohoo, first guest.
Talk about the
Yay.
but I love it. It's a great episode, so I look forward to that. So with that said, pulling up the Twilight Zone list. So we currently have One for the Angels as number 1, Mr. Denton on Doomsday number 2. By the way, this is like a list of like how we rank the episodes thanks to Simpsons show, as I keep saying. One for the Angels number 1, Mr. Denton on Doomsday number 2, Where's Everybody number 3. Would you put this episode at the bottom of the list, or where would you put this episode?
For the messages that I pulled from it and this discussion that I think it has, and with the understanding that it does have a lot of good elements, yeah, it's bottom of the list. It just it doesn't feel like a Twilight Zone episode until you get to the last 3 minutes, and that's, I don't know. I don't feel like there's not enough to draw it forward into that, and not enough. There's other things they could have done, but given I'm sure their turnaround time and everything, I'm not going to fault them that by any stretch, because I couldn't write half as good as Serling could.
Well, no, I mean, if you had taken this episode and put her in the 30s in the beginning of this episode, then it could have worked as a Twilight Zone episode. But this feels like an episode that could appear on like a drama series or something like that.
Yeah,
without the Twilight Zone stuff. But
absolutely, like if she kept dreaming that she was back in the 30s or something, like it needed. And honestly, for everything it had, the biggest detriment was that it took too much from Sunset Boulevard. I mean, that's end of the day, you can say what you want about it, the discussion, the talent behind it, great, but yeah, it is basically just, you know, a poor man's Sunset Boulevard.
Exactly. So with that said, One for the Angels will stick at number 1, at least for this week. I think it's going to change next week when we talk about Walking Distance. Number 4 is 16 millimeter Shrine, and the rest of the number 2 and number 3 stay the same. So with that said, that'll do it for the 16 millimeter Shrine. Triv, thank you once again for appearing on the episode as always.
You're welcome.
Fun to talk to 2D animation character. I love it.
I do what I can. It's always exactly. It's always fun to talk to a 3D fleshy person, you know.
Welcome to the flesh, or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. I don't often get to talk to 3D people, so I appreciate it.
Exactly. But with that said, where can they find you if they want to see your content?
Well, as usual, you can find me sitting right here with 2 microphones for some reason, a set of headsets in this coffee cup that has yet to change, and Rod Serling looking over my shoulder. You can also find me on YouTube at Trivial Theater. Just type that in and you'll go right to my page. Or you can find me on Twitter at trivia_chick.
All right. And with that said, you can find me in the spiral vortex of my insanity.
Yay! I love your spiral vortex of insanity. Yeah, you definitely need some sleep. Catch up, damn it.
That's the name of my metal band, Spiral Vortex of Insanity.
If I could put up devil horns right now for you, I totally would.
Exactly. But with that said, you can also find me at Movie Emporium, where I have my YouTube channel and all that good stuff. Just past 2,500 subscribers, which is awesome. Woo-hoo! So I was really happy to see that. Also, Twitter, Movie Emporium. So follow me there. Also, merchandise if you want to buy my nonsensical MEP stuff. Thanks, Dan, for that, by the way. With that said, that'll do it for this week's episode of The Fifth Dimension, and we'll see you on the next episode of The Twilight Zone. Peace out.
Care.
What's going on, everyone?
Oh, shit. Sorry. Sorry, I just took a giant glass drink and it was like...
I always want to leave that in the episode.